Exciting, exciting, yips Sam, jumping boisterously. Shh, buddy, we don't want to be heard, says Brunhilde, giving him a calming stroke. Okay, mummy, he says, his translator making him slightly quieter. Still exciting? I don't understand why I'm part of this. I only met him recently. It's not exactly like he and I are friends, frowns Dr. Mink. If you don't participate in things like this, you'll never be friends, Fliss, explains an exasperated Kaz. Is the secrecy necessary? Queries Korak. The whole thing isn't always secret. This bit is sort of, obviously you can work it out if this isn't your first, but it's meant to be secret, explains Messia. Krish spent a lot of time on it, says Hasyuk, placing her two-thumbed hands on his shoulders. Thanks, Hasi, smiles Krish before giving her a kiss on the cheek. What's the time? Asks Emiko, a silent Miss Hunter behind her. A relaxed-looking Zahn draping her arms around her impassive girlfriend's shoulders. They're on their way back. We need to get ready, informs Twyla. I'll do it. Just tell me when, says Jenny, picking up a miniature flame-emitting device. Twyla's holographic head bobs in agreement. There follow a few minutes of relative quiet as we wait. Okay now, says Twyla, immediately followed by Jenny giving a brief, slightly pyromaniacal giggle as she ignites the blowtorch and sets the fires. Twyla turns out the lights, leaving the room illuminated only by combustion. Then we hear it, the noise we were waiting for. The reason we didn't put up the privacy field. The sound of the Triple M hallway door opening and footsteps making their way inside. Even though I know there are 5 pairs of feet, only one is audible. I wonder if I would be able to hear those footsteps if she didn't intend me to. The sound draws close to the common room door and I take a preparatory inhale. The door slides open, immediately inducing 11 explosive cracks, propelling colorful paper to be blasted in the direction of those who have just entered. Surprise! Shouts the room in unison at a shocked-looking Victor, who's now dropping the combat stance he briefly assumed when initially alarmed by the unexpected noise. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Takud Victor. Happy birthday to you. We sing as Victor covers his face and gives an embarrassed smile between his girlfriend and pet. Not everyone was able to let off one of the party poppers. Korak and I simply lacked the strength to pull the string with sufficient force to trigger the explosives, and both had not a little reservation about triggering even contained explosions so close to our wing claws. Sam, Fluffy, and Twyla lacked the necessary manipular anatomy, though Twyla was able to summon a holographic simulation of one, and Fluffy and Toon would have been unable to conceal party poppers if they'd taken them to the gym with him. There's a little confusion when it gets to the part of the song where we are to say his name. Korak, Hasyuk, and I had it explained to us that we were to use the name we felt most comfortable with, and a little chaos on that part is normal and expected. As we finish singing, Victor walks to the cake and blows out the 5 wax prisms, one of which is shaped into the Terran numeral for 3. One of which is shaped into their symbol for nullity, the other 3 of which are simple sticks, representing tens of years he's lived, or decades. The room claps and cheers as he does so. You rascal, he says with mirthful, insincere accusation at Toon. I thought it was weird that you were so keen on going to the gym and staying there so much longer than normal. You were distracting me. How do you even know? Toon gives a smug smile and says, when we were talking to my mums, you said you were coming up on 30. I went to Tuck to ask if your birthday was on file. She found it, and we started planning this surprise party for you. Aw, thanks, baby. He turns to me. Cap, thank you. I shake my head. Think nothing of it, Victor. Honestly, I'm a little ashamed that this is the first birthday party you've had since coming aboard. You should have said something. I knew of this custom from my study of Terrans, but didn't quite understand its significance. He laughs. Yeah, well, it'd have felt a bit conceited to tell a bunch of garden worlders that they have to throw a party for me, once or twice per cycle, to congratulate me for not dying in the orbital period of a planet tens of thousands of light years away. I chitter, yes, not dying isn't quite the achievement in the rest of the galaxy that it is in Terran space. Toon makes her way to Victor's side and wraps her arms around him. We didn't tell the crew at large because we knew someone would blab if we did, but we did prepare an evet to send out if you wanted. We got presents for you. They're over there. We might need to relocate to the canteen if you want to invite everyone and too many people show up. Victor kisses her and says, yeah, send the evet. The more the merrier. Sent, interjects Twyla. Thanks, TWE. As to the presents, I don't know what on earth you could have got me. What do you get the guy who already has everything he could possibly want or ask for? It was tricky, but we figured some stuff out. Hope you like them, grins Toon, baring her long teeth. I'm sure I'll love him, he says, planting another kiss on her lips. Krish produces a long, sharp metal cutting implement and extends it, handle first, to Victor's hand. Would you do the honors, birthday boy? He smiles. Victor takes the handle and waits for Krish to release the blade before turning it to the cake. He makes a confident incision, and there is another cheer. Pieces are cut for all except Sam, Fluffy, Hasiak, Twila, Korak, and I, the former three receiving a meat-based alternative to suit their carnivory. Twila summoning a holographic piece of cake and assuring us that she is able to simulate the sensation of eating cake for herself, and Korak and I receiving a delectable fruit-based cake. So, 30, do you feel like an old man yet? Quips Imiko as we eat. Victor laughs. Not really. Sort of don't feel any different to how I did yesterday. Part of me still feels 16 years old. It's always the way. The older you get, the less meaningful birthdays become. I'm sure that'll be all the more the case now that we have regen tech. When you're 500, you'll be utterly uninterested in people throwing birthday parties for you. Have you heard that the first human is about to pass 200? Interjects San. Really? Queries Krish. Yeah, Hiranur Teriyaki from Yeni, Turkey. She was the oldest human alive when Terran Regan was cracked, and will likely always be the oldest human at first treatment. I mean, unless someone else decides they're going to live a natural lifespan, makes it past 170, then changes their mind. I can get a picture of her if you're interested. There is general agreement that we are all interested in seeing a picture of the oldest human alive. Zahn starts to dig for her holopad when Twila projects two images beside one another. Oh, thanks, smiles Zahn. The image on the left is of a wizened woman with sparse white hair, milky white eyes, wrinkled, waxy skin, and, seemingly, none of the oral outcrops of bone that Terrans use for slicing and grinding their food, not having gizzards. The image on the right is of a vibrant, smiling woman with sleek black hair, the sight restored to her eyes, the youth restored to her smooth, olive-brown skin, her smile exposing a mouthful of healthy white bones. What's her lineage? I ask uncertainly. She's a hybrid. She's got ancestry from all four human lineages that existed when she was born. They hadn't sequenced Chwani genes at the time, so we didn't exist. Her hybrid vigor is thought to be a large part of what allowed her to naturally live so long, explains Exxon. According to her Galactopedia article, she is 3/8 sapiens, 3/8 Longi, and had a Neanderthal great-grandmother and Denisovan great-grandfather, elaborates Twila. It's rather a unique appearance it's given her, I observe. You mean she looks like a total babe? Laughs Exxon. She does? I ask, genuinely unsure. There's a chorus of agreement that the Hiranur on the right is extremely attractive by Terran standards. I don't suppose there's any chance that, by astronomical coincidence, she's one of the ones who will be meeting us on the pickup stops, is there? Jokes Jenny. Amiko laughs. To my knowledge, no. If she does come aboard, you'll have to fight me for her. I'm sure your girlfriend will be on my side. Jenny clings to Brunhilde's side and gives her a reassuring kiss. Do you want to open the presents now, Victor? Asks Thun. He thinks a moment. Yeah, probably best if we don't leave it until others arrive. They might feel bad for not having got me anything. Not that they could have, considering that they didn't know it were my birthday, and most of them probably don't know what's expected for a Terran birthday. We move to the pile of presents, and with some ceremony, he begins receiving the gifts we prepared. I hope he's pleased with them. Break. I walk through the gym towards what, until recently, was just called Victor's section, becoming known as the Terran section after the arrival of the rest of Triple M. It consists of specialized equipment that can stand up to the raw power of an exercising Death Worlder, an arena, complete with combat droids to spar against, and behind it, a gun range, where Victor has recently been giving firearms training to Krish, Jenny, Mazia, Hasiak, and Kos. Thun and Brunhilde are both fully proficient in firearms usage, already from being a qualified auxiliary security officer and security officer respectively. Miss Hunter is qualified from being a bodyguard. Zahn and Amiko are military and former military respectively, so none of them need training from Victor, but, from the sounds of it, they train together and advise each other on improvements anyway. Hatathli and Fan both declined to receive firearms training on ethical grounds, and Petrakov because she can't be bothered learning that skill, and won't be on the excursion party, so doesn't need it. The reason I'm heading to the gym's Terran section is that Twila helpfully informed me that there was something interesting going on there, then refused to elaborate. I walk in on a scene of all the members of Triple M, as well as a few of the more intrepid Garden Worlders of my crew, sat around the arena. On the mat is Victor, currently engaged in a vicious hand-to-hand bout against a combat droid. As I approach, Twila's holographic form materializes in front of me and says, "That's far enough, Captain. The gravity in the ring is turned up to 3x galactic standard for Victor and I to fight. It's dangerous for you to go any further." I cock a brow tuft and answer, "Twila, you are correct in your apprehension that I was unaware of the crushing gravity differential. However, I can't help but be somewhat insulted that you think so little of my intelligence, that you believe there to have been any chance of me stepping in that arena with 110 colors of Death Worlder and 65 colors of combat droid fighting so viciously that my brain is only able to apprehend whirring and jerking." She smiles. "I'd rather warn you and not need to than need to and not warn you, Captain." I fan my flight feathers in concession. Fair point. Caution is what Death Worlders do best, even if you are a computer who is constructed in orbit around a garden world. She laughs. I glance around her to the ring. "So that's you, is it?" She nods. "The rounds weren't even, so I said I'd possess a combat droid to even it out. Sucks that I got Victor first. Though I don't think I would have won no matter what." In confusion, I ask, "Rounds? What are you—" But am broken off by Victor grasping the droid, causing me to realize that that's what he has been trying to do the entire time I've been in the room, lifting it off the ground and slamming it down, hard enough to utterly destroy it. "Damn it!" says Twila with an affected snap of her holographic fingers, indicating mock frustration. "Did you lose because you were distracted by me?" I ask, concerned. She feigns indignity. "Captain, it's my turn to be insulted. You think so little of me that you believe I can't have a conversation and a fight at the same time? I've still got processing power to spare, I'll have you know." I chitter, "Sincerest apologies, dear girl. So, what's going on? You mentioned rounds?" She smiles. "Come to the stands and we'll explain," and then leads me to the bench on which sit Emiko, Thran, and Zahn, all giving Fluffy a hearty scritch. "Welcome to Constellation Corner, Captain," smirks Emiko. "Is someone going to explain what's going on?" I ask, quizzically. "We're having a tournament," answers Thran with an angry purple bruise at her left eye. "So, Twila getting knocked out marks the end of the first round. I got beaten by Kaz, Emiko got beaten by Samus. Thran beat Zahn, and you saw Victor turn Twila into scrap metal just now. We're in the semifinal now. It's Thran versus Kaz and Victor versus Samus. Then the winners will fight in the final. I've got a bet with Zahn. I'm betting on Victor to win. She's betting on Thran. So both of you think your partner is the biggest and scariest fledgling in the school canopy?" I quip. "You're right, Captain. We might be a little biased," laughs Exxon. "What are the rules?" I ask, unsure if I'll like the answer. "You lose if you're thrown from the arena, concede, or aren't able to continue. No hair pulling, no eye gouging, no crotch shots. At Victor's insistence, try not to send your opponent to the medical room," lists Twila with unnerving matter-of-factness. But for the wry smirk she gives at Victor's rule, that latter is less a rule, more an advisory, I observe. "Yeah, it wouldn't be any fun if we had to hold back that much," answers Zahn gleefully. I turn to Hasiek, sitting with the others, not in Consolation Corner. "You didn't wish to participate," I say, raising my voice a little, even though it's slightly unnecessary, as my translator detects who I'm directing my speech at and makes sure it reaches her. She answers, "I'm realistic. Thran got knocked out in 15 seconds, and she's Death World raised. I know how likely it is that I'd win and how likely it is that I'd be really hurt. Best if I sit out." "Hey!" says Thran with mock indignation. "I lasted longer than that. I hit her 23 times before she got me." Zahn smirks. "And how many times did she need to get you to knock you out?" Thran looks embarrassed before saying, "Once, but in fairness to me, she used to box semi-professionally." Zahn cocks an eyebrow smugly, seeming to be satisfied that no more needs to be said about that. At this point, Cass and Miss Hunter step into the arena, and a hush comes over the spectators. "How likely is it that Cass beats her?" I ask Twila, while giving Fluffy a scratch between the ears, in an attempt to calm my racing hearts. The absurdity of touching a Deathworld predator for comfort not lost on me. "I calculate her chances at substantially less than 1%, answers Twila. "She may be a boxer, she may be a strong woman, but Thran is the strongest there is and is a professional bodyguard. She's also surprisingly fast. You wouldn't think so, looking at her, but Neanderthals are natural sprinters. Her stamina isn't quite like that of Victor's or Samus's, but I don't think this match will last long enough for stamina to come into play," opines Zahn. The two women take position and bow briefly before Twila declares the match started. They both raise their arms to guard their upper portions and approach each other. Cass has a full 25 centimeters of height advantage. But I have to remember, Hunter is the strongest woman in the galaxy. Cass throws a punch, and faster than I can resolve, Hunter has caught it. Cass answers with a second punch, thrown with her other hand, and Hunter catches that as well. With both her fists now apprehended by the other woman, Cass struggles to pull away, then seems to give up on that and instead settles for kicking and headbutting Hunter, which she barely reacts to. Cass is forced to the ground, her face a mask of pain before she screams, I give up! Uncertainly, I ask, what just happened? Thran was crushing her hands to make her concede, answers Toon. Remembering the solidity of Cass' hands, which she demonstrated the night we met by rattling a hardwood table just by poking it, makes the thought of crushing them hard enough to force her to yield terrifying. Her hands now released, Cass offers her right to Hunter, who hesitates uncertainly before taking it, allowing the two women to shake conciliatorily before Cass makes her way over to me and the four who've already been knocked out. Condolences, smiles Amiko as Cass takes her seat. It's all right. I didn't think I'd beat her, says Cass with a wave of her hand and a shake of her head. I'm more interested in the next two matches. I'd say Victor has the edge on Samus, but I don't think it's clear-cut, and either of them might be a match for Thran. Confused, I ask, they could. Isn't she stronger than both of them? Cass smiles the smile of a Deathworlder who's about to explain something they know and you don't, before answering, yes, Captain, but strength is not the only strength. You'll have to forgive my Garden Worlder brain for being addled by that contradiction. How is strength not the only strength? Surely by definition. Strength equals sign strength, doesn't it? I respond, my natural eyes narrowed. Clearly delighted that I swallowed the bait, as a Terran would put it, Cass begins, what I mean is that being stronger than your opponent isn't enough to guarantee you winning a fight. My trainer used to explain it in terms of the 5 S's. Sighing, I ask, and what are the 5 S's? She holds up her 5-fingered hand and begins counting. Strength, speed, stamina, skill, and strategy. All the strength in the universe doesn't matter if you can't move fast enough to land a hit. The perfect strategy is useless if you don't have the strength to use it, etc. Of course, it's not perfect. It doesn't account for things like Victor's huge reach advantage, Thran's mass advantage, or barrel chest. But it covers all the things you can work on without gene therapy or augmentation. I consider her explanation for a few moments, as Brunhilde and Victor walk into the arena and bow, and Twyla announces the start of the match. I have questions, but decide to wait until the break between this round and the final. The two Terrans circle, both poised in readiness. Their eyes fly over each other, seeming to be searching for any vulnerability, their footfalls precise and automatic, their bodies curled to minimize the front-facing target. For a moment, I forget the fact that these are two friends, two sentient beings who've time and time again demonstrated the fact that they are allies and good people. My mind sees killers, sees monsters. I shake myself back to reality. Terrifying as they are my friends, and this is a friendly combat game. Friendly combat, based on something I could not perceive. The Titans decide that now is the moment to initiate the fight and engage each other. The fight is a blur to me as they swing, miss, swing, and if those sickening thuds are anything to go by, hit. The two of them seem to be a much closer match than either Kaz and Hunter or Victor and Twyla's combat droid. Steadily, however, Brunhilde is pushed back and back toward the edge of the arena. She redoubles her ferocity in a way that reflexively makes me cling to Fluffy. Then, around 3 minutes after it started, Victor's boot ejects Brunhilde from the ring, and the round is over. She stands and the two of them shake hands, heartily, before she makes her way over to the group I'm sat with. All right, so it's Victor versus Miss Hunter for the final. Now, how would you assess their matchup under your 5S model? I address Cass. Tricky, she says with a finger and thumb at her chin. Thran obviously has the strength advantage, and I think I'd also give her the speed advantage. As Zahn said, Neanderthals are built for sprinting. I'd have to give the stamina advantage to Victor. It's very difficult to assess both of their relative skill levels, given how much higher skilled they are than everyone but Samus and Toon. I think in terms of kinesthesia and awareness, Toon outdoes both of them, but simply doesn't have the strength to turn that to her advantage in an unarmed bout. Is that fair to say, Toon? Toon's purple bruise is now augmented by purple cheeks, as she says, I suppose so, with clear embarrassment at the praise. She then adds, I think Victor would have the advantage there. I don't know if he has better kinesthesia than her, but she has AC, so I don't think she'll read him as well as he'll read her. I'm forced to interject again, AASC. Zahn answers autistic spectrum condition. My girl's Aspergic, and it means she can't do social stuff, as well as a neurotypical. In this case, it means that she won't be able to see Victor's intentions, as well as he can see hers. She's not shy about it, in case you're worried that I've told you something you shouldn't know. Cass considers, So, strength and speed to Thran, stamina and skill to Victor. She has a mass advantage and more solid bones than him. He has a lot more reach than her. I'd say those things cancel each other out. That means it'll be strategy that determines this match. I think the best strategy for Thran would be to end the match quickly, proactively close the distance to nullify his reach advantage, and win before he can apply his stamina advantage to wear her out. I don't think she'll do that, though. She played both of her previous matches quite reactively. She waited to be attacked and then responded. Victor's best bet would be to try to draw things out to the point where she gets exhausted. It could go either way. I decide to get Twila's opinion. Twila, what would you put their odds at? She shakes her head. The same as good as 50-50. It's rare for odds to be so even. At this point, Victor indicates that he's done recovering from the round with Brunhilde, and he and Hunter take position in the arena, bowing to one another. As Twila declares the match started, the best security officer in the galaxy and the strongest woman in the galaxy take defensive stances. Fluffy emits an indignant growl, and it's only then that I realize I've been frantically scratching to the extent that I've apparently caused her discomfort. Sorry, Fluffy, I say, seeming to satisfy her by my tone. Those are some nerves I must have had just now to cause me to cause an Atexian merc beast discomfort. I'm probably among only a handful of beings who can claim they've done that and lived, most of whom are in this room. Victor has certainly adjusted his style across the 3 rounds I've seen him fight. Against Twila, he was ferocity itself, correctly judging that her combat droid posed 0 credible threat. Perhaps I should look into upgrading. In his match with Brunhilde, he was poised but still self-assured. Against Hunter, he's cautious. He's actually hesitating to approach her. She stands perfectly still, only moving to keep facing him and adjust her footing, as he moves left and right, seeming to be looking for an angle of attack. After around 30 seconds of sizing her up, he commits to an approach, but seems much less happy about it than he did when engaging Brunhilde. Making use of his reach advantage, he throws a punch which, judging only by the sound, Hunter seems to have parried with her forearm. They both move faster than I can follow, Victor dancing out of range to avoid her blows, Hunter knocking his blows aside as they come. Using his much longer legs, he delivers sweeping kicks to hers, which, while she is thoroughly incapable of returning, don't seem to bother her all that much. Everything about this is alarming. The speed and precision which I infer them both to be utilizing with each strike, the thuds and booms of their bodies impacting each other in the mat, the fact that they're doing this in 1.5x their cradle world's gravity, the fact that they're doing it for fun, or at least not out of necessity. Victor does indeed seem to be attempting to induce Hunter to exhaustion, but she appears to only be answering each strike with the minimum effort to deflect it. Those who are able to follow what's going on gasp in reaction to developments. My brain simply doesn't work fast enough to allow me to perceive. Then, all at once, the motion stops, and I am given a brief glimpse of Hunter, with her hand wrapped around Victor's wrist, immediately followed by him being knocked several meters backward, paired with a sickening crack. Now, lying on the mat, Victor emits a horrific strained wheeze, which lets me know that something is not right. I turn to Twila. Drop the gravity back to galactic standard right now. Get me a scan of Victor. Something's not right. Then, addressing Brunhilde and Cass. You two, find a stretcher. Gravity is normalized, Captain. Victor Taylor has 5 fractures across his 3 lowermost right side ribs, says Twila. Odds of survival? I answer, entering the ring with her following beside me. He's extremely unlikely to die from broken ribs and having the air knocked out of his lungs. He'll need regen, though. It would be another matter if he'd had a lung punctured, she answers, all cheer gone from her voice. I pass Hunter and see her usual blank mask expression replaced with one of terror. Send urgent notifications to Doctors Gato, Xing, Hatathli, and Fan. We need at least one of them to meet us at the medroom, I say to Twila, entirely in captain mode now. I draw up to Victor, lying on the mat gasping to draw air into emptied lungs. Victor, talk to me. Let me know you're all right. Fine. Cap, had worse. Where's Thran? He answers through wheezes. I look around and see she's disappeared from view. I turn back as Brunhilde is laying a stretcher beside him and answer, She's gone, Victor. Why do you want her? He raises his right hand feebly and answers, Didn't shake hands. I give a mirthless laugh before saying, You idiot, Victor. Then, addressing all present, From now on, don't send your opponent to the medical room is a hard rule for all future matches. Captain's orders. Fixation. As I enter the Terran section of the gym and pass the boundary of the privacy field, I hear the booming thud, coming in rapid succession from around the corner. I turn to see Victor traveling at dizzying speed, while remaining stationary on a human-sized treadmill, his normally silent, footfalls echoing chaotically, his body soaked with sweat, his face exhausted, but fixed forward with grim determination. I advance past an obliterated heavy bag, and he gives no indication that he has noticed me enter. I actually don't think he has. Drawing up to the treadmill, I give a singular, sharp chit to catch his attention. He does not react. "Victor," I say, still not getting any indication that he's aware I'm here. "Victor," I say again, as he continues running forward at dizzying speed while remaining stationary. "Victor," I say, causing him to start. Huff, what is it? Cap?" he says, turning his haggard face to me while not breaking stride. "I need to speak to you. Could you come off the treadmill?" I say, raising my voice over his thundering footfalls. Looking nonplussed, he waits to deactivate the backwards motion of the walkway beneath him, and it begins decelerating. When it's reached a low enough speed, he hops off it and collapses into a semi-reclined position on the floor. "What do you, need to, talk about?" he says, the pungent scent of his sweat assaulting my nostrils. "What are you doing in here, Victor?" I ask, attempting to keep my tone neutral and accusation out of my voice. Training? What does it, look like?" he asks, bemused. "It's the middle of the nocturnal, Victor. Why are you training?" I say with concern. "Well, I've got the privacy, field up. What's it matter what? Time it is. I ain't disturbing no one. Am I?" he asks, slightly defensively. "Not with your noise, Victor. Your behavior, on the other hand, has been upsetting people," I say, still trying to keep my voice factual rather than accusing. He begins to try to speak when I cut him off to say, "Victor, catch your breath and dry yourself up, then sit with me. We need to speak properly." He shrugs, and I take a seat on a nearby bench, waiting for him to be ready. It takes a few minutes. When he's finished catching his breath and toweling off, he comes and sits next to me, straddling the bench in order to allow himself to face me. "So, I've been upsetting people? How?" he says, his exhausted face adorned with an expression of concern. "Victor, do you know how many times I've visited Triple M in the last 12 diurnals?" I ask. He frowns and answers, "I don't, Cap." "7 times, Victor. How many times have we seen each other in that same period?" "Well, we saw each other 3 days ago, briefly," he answers, clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, and do you remember anything we spoke about?" I ask, evaluating. Reticent, he answers, not as such, no. "That's because we didn't speak, Victor. You blew in, made yourself up some ludicrously high-protein, high-calorie meal solution, picked up some lab-grown meat for Fluffy, and then took her here for exercise. Beyond hello, we didn't exchange a word." He shifts uncomfortably but does not answer. "What's going on, Victor? Have you declared some sort of Death Worlder vendetta against Miss Hunter for breaking your ribs, for beating you in the tournament? Are you training for a rematch with her?" A look of indignant revulsion passes over his face as he says, "Captain, no! She beat me, fair and square. I'm not some precious little man-child who'd want payback for being beaten in a contest I agreed to participate in. Yeah, I'd have preferred my ribs not get broken, but, well, it's not like she meant to. Not like it was spiteful. Thran and I are all good. I cock a brow tuft, you're all good, are you? How many times have you seen her since she sent you to the medroom?" His eyes narrow in recall. "None? Or if you've seen her at all, it was fleeting, and you didn't say much beyond hello? A little odd, given that you've spent nearly every hour you could in this room, and she's a bodybuilder. Are Terran bodybuilders in the habit of taking that long off from a visit to the gym?" His face tells me I'm right on the mark. "She's probably been working out in her room," and he says with unease. I press the point. "Why would she have been doing that, Victor? She's terrified that you hate her now is why. You haven't taken the time to explain that you don't have a grudge against her, and your behavior is suggesting that you do. She won't listen to your mutual friends telling her that it's not the case. It's unlike you to be so socially blind, Victor. All your friends report that they've barely seen you outside this room. Since the match, Dr. Gatto tells me you've purchased 3-minute periods of regeneration, multiple times per diurnal. Jenny tells me that the longest conversation she's had with you outside of this room was when you came to ask her about the possibility of upgrading the functionality of our current stock of combat droids to make them better sparring partners. I'm told you've not joined the Cuddle Puddle and barely slept in Triple M, implying you're either sleeping here or, more likely, not sleeping full stop. You're looking after Fluffy, at least in the technical sense of feeding, cleaning, and exercising, but you're neglecting your friends. If it's not for revenge, then why? What's going on?" He opens and closes his mouth a few times, pain in his eyes. He looks like he wants me to interrupt, to spare him the need to answer my question. I don't oblige him. After an age, he slumps and answers, I'm scared, Cap. What are you scared of, Victor? I respond, keeping my tone neutral and trusting. He's trusting me, so it's the least I owe him. He abortively attempts to start several times. It's the thing. I need. Eventually, he stops, takes a deep breath, opens his eyes, and fixes them on mine. Cap, I ain't really had anything I needed to be scared of between about ages 16 and 29. When I were a kid, the worst I needed to worry about was fucking idiots from school finding me on the street and kicking the shit out of me. Age 11, I took up Shaolin to be able to defend myself. Age 16, I defended you. Suddenly, I had cushy uni digs and an extremely generous study stipend, contributed partly by the government and mainly by you. I spent the next 4 years learning how to survive, how to fight, all the ways to recognize danger and answer it, better than anyone. When I came out of uni with my 67th generation black sash, with my firearms license, with my wilderness survival experience, with my xenobiology neutralization training, I felt fucking invincible. The next few years didn't help. Sure, every now and then there'd be a curious death world animal that'd get too close to the expedition, and I'd need to scare it off or put it down, but for the most part, my job consisted of telling people, much smarter than me, to spit out fucking obviously poisonous berries and stuff. I was so much stronger than everyone around me. Sure, I usually weren't the smartest in the room, but I was always the one with the most, what I'd call common sense. I ain't never told no one this, but at 25, when I were doing the correspondence course to upgrade to security specialist for fun and a little for vanity, I decided to try and work out roughly how many people in the galaxy'd be a match for me in a fight. It was never meant to be serious. Obviously, in a fight is too vague to be taken serious. Just a bit of theoretics and ego stroking. The number I came up with was 10,000. That was the ballpark, back of the envelope. Fermi estimation of people I thought might be a match for me. How I got there ain't important. The fact is, that number stuck in my head. 10,000 people, I reckon, might be able to beat me. Every time I felt unsure about something, I'd laugh that unless one of those 10,000 have defied the odds to show up and are hell-bent on destroying me, I ain't got nothing to worry about. Then I had my little meltdown, and you hired the other Triple M's, and I was like, cool. Samus is nearly in the 10,000. And in certain circumstances, Toon is in the 10,000. Well, they're friends, so it ain't like I need to worry about it. Then we got boarded. I was the weak link. I was the one who needed to go to Reagan on a stretcher. Everyone else did what they was supposed to. That man, he was just better than me. Suddenly, it seemed like the most vain, conceited, arrogant, narcissistic thing imaginable to have ever estimated myself so high. And, since then, there's been a few other things, like talking to Toon's mums. Katrine's got 125 years of HEMA and reconstructed Norse martial arts under her belt, more than 6 times my CQC experience, even if she's only ever used it in reenactments. He pauses here to take a breath before continuing. When Thran broke my ribs, it made me realize I can't keep being complacent. There's scary stuff and scary people out there, and every extra bit of strength I have, every extra bit of experience, skill, makes me better able to put myself between the scary stuff and the ones I want to keep safe. All right, he's given me a lot to consider there. I decide to buy myself time by asking in the brief region periods, Victor, what are they for? Well, Terrans gain muscle by working out, because when we do stuff that strains the capacity of our current level of muscle, it tears and frays. When our body repairs itself, it effectively says, well, this clearly ain't sufficient. Guess we need to add a little more muscle. Exercising naturally, you've got to give yourself time to recover. So there's a limit to how fast you can make gains. Using region, I can just keep going and drag myself to the med room to recover. Last 2 weeks, I've gained 3 kilograms of muscle. That's like 4 months worth. So long as I make sure I've got enough protein and calories on board, only limit is waking hours in the day. And I've been using stims to maximize those, he answers, guilty at that last. So, to summarize, Victor, I say with a wry cock of my brow tuft, your behavior can be described as mighty death worlder, who believed himself invincible, discovers that he is, in fact, mildly vincible, becomes fixated on eradicating the last of his weakness, and ascending from the mortal realm to godhead. Truly a worthy supervillain origin story. He chuckles, but the smile does not touch his tired eyes. The reason it's a legal requirement to have a Terran escort on expeditions to death worlds, Victor. What is it, I say, echoing my words to him the night he broke his arm from drunkenness. He looks up and recalled not strength, not ferocity, self-preservation, nose for danger. I give a Terran smile paired with a nod of agreement. Just so, dear boy. However, on this occasion, your self-preservation is telling you that you aren't safe because things exist that might harm you. Victor, without becoming a deity, there will always be things that could harm you. You also can't be everywhere at once. So, even after you attained your unattainable invincibility, you wouldn't be able to guarantee always being next to everyone you want to protect, every time they need protecting. I pause to collect my thoughts before continuing. Victor, it seems to me that you're more likely to lose your new friendships by neglecting them in pursuit of the strength to protect them than you are by failing to protect them. Also, you're clearly suffering from sleep deprivation. How fit do you think you'd be to fight off pirates in your current state? Tears well up in his eyes as he looks down in shame. You're right. Sniff. Cap. I was being stupid. I place my wing claws on the stone-hard flesh of his forearm and refute, No, Victor, not stupid. You are a death worlder, and, to be frank, having evolved on one of the single most hellish planets ever studied, it's a fucking miracle that humans aren't gibbering nervous wrecks all the time. What this is you having a moment of realization regarding the fragility of life and wanting to do something about it, not stupid. Granted, what you chose to do was somewhat stupid and counterproductive, but I can understand why you reacted this way. It's probably, in large part, my fault for taking 9 years to recognize that you needed friends. Now you have friends. It's natural that you'd be scared to lose them. He smiles at me through his tears. I stand and extend my wings to wrap them around his shoulders. Reaching to gently pat my back as I hug him, he says, Cap? Yes, Victor? I think I need a therapist or something. I'll talk to Miyazaki about that tomorrow. I'm sure she will be able to procure someone qualified to meet us on one of the next few planets before we leave Terran space. What you need right now, however, is sleep, Victor. Captain's orders. Go to Triple M. Sleep. Either in the cuddle puddle or in your and Toon's room tomorrow. Talk to Thran. Talk to everyone so they aren't worrying. Explain as much as you're comfortable with. Then come and visit Tkakak. When you're ready, she's missed you. He nods over my wing and then makes to get up, causing me to release him from the hug. We leave the Terran section together and, as we pass through the privacy field, I say, Twyla? Yes, Captain, comes her voice over the PA. As of this moment, onboard region is for medical use only. Time is no longer available for purchase. I'll make it so, Captain. Anything else? She answers, cheerfully. Yeah, Victor Taylor is limited to 5 hours in the gym per diurnal. If he attempts to exceed that, I stop to think a moment. Pipe and Baby Shark Dance on repeat at 400% standard volume until he leaves. I smile at him. And Cap, low blow, he laughs. Talk, Victor's perspective. Pain, everything is pain. Every inch of me aches. I really thrashed myself to death yesterday. Perhaps I should have made the case to Cap that her injunction against frivolous regions should take effect after I'd bought one last recovery. I open my eyes to see my arms wrapped around Toon's back, between her upper and lower sets of arms. Her upper arms are wrapped around the back of my neck. Her lowers are against the side of my chest. Her sleeping face is angled toward mine, over my left shoulder. I trace down the gully created by her spine with the fingertips of my right hand. My left reaches up to stroke her ear. In my peripheral vision, I see her glowing eyes open. Hey, I smile. Hey yourself, she smiles back. Sorry again for waking you up last night, and for being an arse these last few weeks. It's fine, baby, and I'm just glad you're back with us. I'm sorry it wasn't me who came to talk sense into you. As to waking me up, you know that evolving on an eyeball world means sleep is something I can basically just do whenever I feel like it. None of the crankiness of a light worlder when waking up either. She chuckles. Some people get all the blessings, I smirk back. Yes, and I'm definitely one of them. Though it is interesting that my biggest blessing was happy to let me sleep with 2 gorgeous men and 5 gorgeous women, without him for 2 weeks. Babes, I start wryly. What is rule 1 of the cuddle puddle? She rolls her luminous irides. The cuddle puddle isn't sexual. No sex jokes about the cuddle puddle. Yep, it runs the risk of people getting self-conscious and weirded out. Fliss, Thran, and Emmy still ain't interested then. She shakes her head. Felicity is still doing her tsuntsun thing. Emiko still says she wants to keep a professional distance. But I think that's what she's saying, because she can see how uncomfortable Thran was with the idea and didn't want her to feel like she had to. I shrug. That's fair enough. Thran would probably feel like she weren't doing her bodyguarding if she let her sleep in a room with all of us and wasn't there to protect her, in case one of us was a long con assassin or something. Good of Emmy to recognize that, though. She nods in agreement. Speaking of Thran, I gotta go clear the air with her. You mind letting me up? She nods and rolls off me, and I sit up. Muscles still screaming reproach at me, for having annihilated them without fixing them in regen. I reach for the breakfast of meal solution I had the foresight to make up last night. Toon makes a pretend gagging sound as I chug it down. I'll never understand how you can drink that stuff, baby, she quips with a shake of her head. I just need calories and protein to fix myself up right now. The palate and dining experience ain't a priority, I answer, amused. I truly do not envy you persistence hunters for the things you have to do for that stamina. Stealth ambush niche for the win. She smiles. I finish chugging down my breakfast and give her a kiss. You're sure you don't want me to come with? She asks as I dress. I shake my head. I feel like I owe it to her to go alone. If she says she doesn't want to talk to me alone, I might ask you and or Zahn to sit in. But I feel like if we go together, she might feel ganged up on. She nods. Okay, good luck. I make to leave, then turn back for one last kiss. Toon smirks. You? Kiss? Gonna go? Kiss or stay here kissing me all day? I'm gonna go. Kiss. I just need a bit of Toon power. Kiss. She giggles and my heart swoops. I love her so goddamn much. Having got enough kisses to recharge my very depleted reserves of Toon power, I bid her goodbye and leave to have what promises to be an awkward conversation. I walk to her door and ring. There are some moments of silence. She has the privacy field up. Then, the door opens and reveals the strongest woman in the galaxy. In a brown tank top and seamless shorts, her coarse explosion of wavy orange hair is tied into a simple ponytail, and she's covered in sweat. She was working out in her room. I feel guilt kick me in the gut. Her eyes are initially at my midriff, but widen and shoot up, almost meeting mine before they avert to look away. Hey, I wanted to talk to you. I can come back, if now ain't a good time. If you want Zahn or anyone else to be here, that's fine with me. She doesn't meet my eyes as she says, we can talk. I don't care. I don't need her to see. There's a moment of hesitation before I ask, all right, can I come in? Still not making eye contact, she screws up her face for a fifth of a second, apparently embarrassed of having missed the social cue to invite me in, before standing aside and saying, come in, sit down. I walk into the immaculately kept room. She moved in a few weeks ago, but other than the mannequin holding her ludicrously heavy fantasy armor and plasma war pick, the exercise equipment in the corner of the room, and the heavy bag hung from the ceiling in the center, there's precisely zero sign that anyone lives here. No dirty laundry, no glasses of water on the bedside table, no scraps of paper on the desk, nothing. I make for the armchairs by the coffee table and sit. She's not followed me. Instead, she's toweling off her sweat. Fair enough. I did catch her in the middle of a set, it seems. I'll wait for her to dry herself off. When she finishes, rather than coming to sit opposite me, she walks to the mannequin and relieves it of her Becta Corbin, releases the power source that makes it a plasma weapon, and, only then, walks over to where I'm sitting. This is odd behavior, but, well, it doesn't read as threatening despite the weapon in her hands, so I don't react. Just observe. Reaching me, she places the Beck on the table in front of me. Without looking at me, she takes a few steps back, turns to show me her right side profile, and raises her right arm to place the wrist at the top of her scalp. At least 5 across, at least 3, she says, not looking at me. Utterly lost, I respond, sorry? At least 5 what's across at least 3 what's? Break my ribs at least 5 times across at least 3 ribs, like I did to you, she says, as if asking me to pass her the salt. I'm sure I don't have to tell you to use the hammerhead side, not the beak or the spike. I'm sure you also know that if you hit me full force, you could very likely kill me, so please, just hit me hard enough to break some ribs and no harder. I stare agog at her for several seconds, trying to work out if she's joking. I eventually come to the conclusion that she's serious and feel a rising wave of anger well up. I'm about to ask her what the hell she thinks that she's playing at when I regain control. Remember that I'm here to apologize and calmly start. I won't be doing that. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk to you, like I said. I ain't here for revenge. I ain't here to corporally punish you. She rounds on me, eyes now fixed on mine, prominent brow twisted in a pained expression. I hurt you. The only way to make... Not happening, I interrupt, still fighting to keep the anger out of my voice. Please put that away, sit with me, and listen. She stares at me with that wounded expression for several long moments, then picks up the nasty weapon and takes it to place it back with the mannequin. Coming back, she slumps into the seat opposite me and doesn't meet my eyes. Okay, first things first, may I call you Thran? I know we all started calling you Thran and you didn't object, but if you'd prefer Hunter, Miss Hunter, or Gimli, please let me know, I say calmly. I don't offer to call her by her other name. Given that the whole point is to put her at ease, now is not the time to bring up things I only know because of my parasocial relationship with her. Thran's fine, she mutters, quiet enough that I almost don't catch it. All right, Thran, I have an apology to make. She whips her head to me, glaring, and opens her mouth, but I hold up my hand to stop her. Please let me finish. She hesitates, then nods, surlily. I have an apology to make. Yes, you hurt me. However, I didn't begrudge it even a moment. You beat me, and it was a fantastic fight. My apology comes because of what happened next. I should have found you, should have congratulated you, and should have made clear there was no ill will. I got distracted with my own shit, assumed that the fact that I had no hard feelings was obvious, and let you think I was bitter and plotting revenge. I'm sorry. I should have thought about how you'd feel. Should have realized that you don't know me well enough to know that that ain't what I'm like. So was happens, she mumbles. I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. This always happens, she says, fiercely now. I do something stupid, then think something stupid, then it's someone else's job to come and explain it to me like I'm a child. I hate it. I hate that there's so much I just don't understand about how to be around people. I sometimes think that Neanderthals just weren't meant for the space age. We had our time and it ended 30,000 years ago. We had our little niche, living in tiny groups, sprinting down animals in Ice Age Europe, and then we died off because you were just better than us. Your niche let you do what we couldn't. Sure, a single-digit percentage of your DNA might be from my people, but the fact is, my people only exist today because of your people's survivor's guilt. You brought us back to a world that had left us behind, to a world we don't deserve. You saw that, by your standards, nearly half of us had a social disorder. And instead of quietly forgetting that you'd ever cloned us back, and letting those that you had just disappear into your population, you declared the disorder a condition and kept going, kept dragging us, kicking and screaming, back from oblivion, forcing us to exist in a world we just don't belong in, among people who can be expected to just know things, like there are no hard feelings or offering ribs for ribs is not okay. I've hurt someone I idolize, and the only thing I could think to do was offer to let you hurt me back. And it was just the wrong thing to do, wasn't it? Wow. I think the number of words I've ever heard her speak in person has just doubled in the last 30 seconds. And it was all baggage. Every bit as bad as what I spilled to Cap last night. The phrase burst damn comes to mind. Did she say she idolizes me? Okay, Victor, not about you. Ask about that after everything else is sorted, if at all. I want to start, Thran, by saying I'm 30 years old, not 30,000. I wasn't there when the last natural Neanderthals died out. I don't know how it went down. I do know that when you were sharpening spears to hunt mammoths, we were doing the same. It ain't exactly like we're any more cut out for spaceships than you. I wasn't there when we decided to bring you back, and while that is within recorded history, I can't give a full account of the reasoning that went into it. I'm sure that no one can, though there'll be people who do better than me, for sure. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was in part a kind of survivor's guilt, us feeling like we didn't deserve to be the only ones who made it when we had to step over so many others to get there. I don't know. What I do know is that the galaxy is better with you in it. Richer, stronger, sweeter. I know that you deserve the second chance you got. When it comes to ASD versus ASC, I think there were people saying it should be ASC since the 20th century. It ain't just causing Neanderthals that we changed it. We changed it because disorder implies it's inherently a problem, which it ain't. It's the way some folk are, and it don't make them any lesser. I had a Neanderthal in my orphanage. She was also in my class at school. She was tube-born, not natural-born like you. She was meant to be fostered out, but after the war, fostering prospects were a little thin on the ground. She and I were good friends. She said similar stuff to what you've just said. Not meant tos and don't deserves. Our classmates didn't help. There were slurs, nasty, mean-spirited stuff. The fact is, she was the brightest in the class, and they were jealous. She's a doctor now and married to a man she loves dearly. The point I'm trying to make is, I suppose, does it matter? Does it matter if some arbitrary deity or fate decided your lineage wasn't going to survive the Ice Age? You're here now. What are you going to do about it? Because, well, you're both the strongest woman in the galaxy and its best bodyguard. At least according to the ODR. You ain't doing too badly, I'd say. I take a deep breath, but she doesn't make to speak, so I keep talking. Thran, last night, I realized that I had a ton of issues that I hadn't been dealing with properly. I asked to see a therapist. Don't take this the wrong way, but I think if we can get a therapist, it might be a good idea for you to see him too. I'm happy to listen to you, but I ain't an expert on the human mind. And there's a good chance I might do more harm than good if I try and sort out your problems. This ain't an instruction, it's a suggestion. If we get a therapist, I think you should see him. She nods, a nod of consideration more than agreement. She doesn't say anything. I don't really have anything else to say about any of that. So I decide to satisfy my curiosity about the other things she said. What did you mean, someone you idolize? I ask, interested. She shifts, I think uncomfortably, and answers, You, you're someone I idolize. That is consistent with how it sounded, but no less surprising. We met each other for the first time less than 2 months ago. We ain't really spoken much in that time. How'd you end up idolizing me? I ask. She shakes her head. You were a childhood hero. I was 12 when I first saw your face and heard about the new so position. I thought you were just the coolest. I took up Shaolin to be like you. I wanted to be an SO like you, but no course would have me. Social intelligence too low. Couldn't intuit things a garden worlder wouldn't know. Questions I should ask. Meaning of non-explicit gestures, etc., etc. I had to give up on it eventually and became a bodyguard instead. Scraped in because the social intelligence demands were just lower enough. That's very unexpected. I knew they'd used my image to promote the new So course, but I didn't think I had fans. I knew she had a black sash, same as me. Even if I hadn't read it, it'd have been obvious from fighting her, using her southern boxing style. But to think I inspired it, I don't know if I ever made it explicit, Thran, but I'm a huge fan of your bodybuilding. I just about given up on reading interviews with bodybuilders when I first read yours. So much of it was just preening and posturing. So much of the advice was factually wrong, sometimes irresponsibly so. Then I read yours and it was so insightful. I learned something every time I read or watched you be interviewed. You had a really unique perspective on bodybuilding, and I incorporated a lot of your stuff into my own regimen. She narrows her eyes suspiciously. You're just saying that. I shake my head. True, every word. I'm a huge fan, and it's interesting to learn that you're also a fan of me. Never met a fan before. She ponders that. I stand and say, Thran, it's been wonderful having this heart-to-heart, but I've got stuff to do today, and, well, I don't want to make either of our girlfriends suspicious. It really ain't an option for me today, but when I'm recovered. What do you say to a workout sesh together? In the gym. She smiles and nods. I hold out my hand, and hesitantly, she takes it for a handshake. Congrats on that well-earned victory, I wink. Thank you, she says nervously. I make to leave, but she says, Victor. I turn back. Yes, Thran? You're in Shi Daoyuan's lineage? She asks, making it sound more like a statement. Yeah, never met him, but he's the man who trained the woman who trained the man who trained me. So, yeah, 3 generations above me. I don't bother asking how she knew that, given that she's just confessed to being a fan, though it is a little disconcerting that she just had such a trivial detail in her mind. She was more sure about that than I was. Why do you ask? I question. I am as well, and I thought you'd like to know that we're picking him up on Shindichin. He will be the ship's fitness instructor, and Mistress Miyazaki felt that we could perhaps study under him, improve our CQC. It's not mandatory. Wow, I'd be thrilled. That sounds amazing, I say excitedly. I didn't know we shared Shaolin lineage. I guess that makes us cousin of a sort other than evolutionary, I quip. This time she's the one to extend her hand. I look forward to studying with you, Shiru Ming, she says, using my Dharmic name. I grasp her hand and answer, You as well, Shiru Feng. We shake and smile. I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Arts. It is a lovely sword, observes Emiko, of the sheathed Deathworld blade, similar to Victor's plasma falchion, on a stand in the shop we're passing time in. If you think it's lovely, why don't you buy it? Asks Jenny cheerily. It would only be an ornament, and really, I have enough ornaments. I'll leave it, she decides. Fair enough, Jenny shrugs before turning to Fan and Sue. It's about damn time you two got together. It couldn't have been more obvious you were into each other. Who asked? Fan's cheeks flush and the Suigu receiving a piggyback from him. Her legs melted into a ring around his waist. Grins over his shoulder. I initiated things. Cuckoo was being a scaredy cat. She squeezed under my door, chuckles Fan, half under his breath. Do you two need to get moving? They have to be nearly there by now, says Messia, the Shing's heads over his shoulders. I turn my eyes out of the circular window at the front of the shop to the enormous forested spire that looms over Shin de Dongfeng and see Victor, Brunhilde, Toon, Sean, Kas, and Thran walking on a path with a sheer drop to their right and a sheer cliff face to their left. There's still some distance from the top. I'd say we have around 30 minutes until we need to head to the shuttle. Incredulously, Petrikov steps to my side, looks in the same direction, and says, You can see them? I can see them, I confirm. With your bionics, right? Asks Krish. I frown, bring my left wing up to cover my artificial eyes, and look again. No, I can see them with my natural eyes as well. Well, my main spectrum eye, at least. At this distance, the humidity in the air is swallowing their heat signatures. That's incredible, observes Hatatli. Emiko smirks. You know, all of you could stand to be a little less shocked. When a garden worlder demonstrates an ability that exceeds that of a human, it can come across as arrogant, as if you believe that humans ought to exceed non-humans at all times, in all things. Everyone, except the shop attendant, Emiko and I, has a moment of looking embarrassed before Emiko looks out of the window and adds, "That is very impressive, though," with an appreciative smile. Shi Dao Yuan's perspective. It's quiet, but I hear the shuttle approaching from the direction of the valley below as I sit, playing my erhu, on the steps surrounding a courtyard in the temple I founded half a century ago. I briefly catch a glimpse of the shuttle over the roof to my left before it sets down. I don't interrupt my playing, letting the mournful notes continue to echo across the courtyard. A few minutes pass before my best student, Shishiwei, comes to me and says, "Shifu, they're here. The ones who wish to take you." Still playing, I answer, "Thank you, Abbess. Please show them in." I retired as abbot around 10 years ago, but continue to reside and teach here. Wei was definitely the right woman to cede control to. When the ODR contacted this temple, saying they wanted the galaxy's finest martial artist to be a fitness instructor of all things, I very nearly responded that they should just visit a gym if they wanted someone to lead Qigong, and such with uninitiated individuals. The detail that 2 students in my lineage are aboard this ship, as well as several others proficient in arts other than Shaolin, it changed my mind. I'm still not certain I won't send someone else. One of my students. Not Wei, of course, but someone from the 65th or 66th generation. It depends on how they perform. A Japanese woman and a Rakali woman with prosthetics enter the far side of the courtyard. The Japanese woman has schooling in Kyojutsu, Kenjutsu, Jujutsu, and Iaijutsu from childhood, and then served in the military, excelling in standardized military CQC there. The Rakali has been schooled in Rakali military aerial combat and ground combat. She was good but hasn't practiced in some time, I'd guess, since the war. "That's him? He doesn't look particularly impressive?" the Rakali woman asks the Japanese, having correctly determined that I am not wearing a translator and, incorrectly, concluded that I am out of earshot. "Don't I? Well, appearances can be deceptive," I answer in fluent Rakali, just loud enough to allow my voice to carry over my playing across the courtyard. The Rakali woman freezes and begins to stammer in embarrassment. But I interrupt, "It's all right, ma'am. If you were a prospective student, it would be another matter, but I take no offense at how laughably you've just underestimated me." The 2 women approach me, the Rakali still visibly embarrassed, the Japanese doing a much better job of concealing her embarrassment. The Japanese woman kneels in a dogusa, and the Rakali, following her lead, folds her natural and artificial legs beneath her, nestling into the ground. Finishing my tune, I put down my instrument and its bow and take out a translator, adhering it to my temple. Even if I speak both of their first languages, it would make things difficult if only one of them could understand me at a time. "So, you have students for me?" I address the Japanese woman. "Yes, Shifu. They're on their way up the mountain now. They should be here shortly." I smile. "You don't need to call me Shifu, ma'am. Not unless you wish to become my student yourself, which I take it you don't, given your method of arrival." She nods politely. "I assume you know how bad it will look if your prospects were on that shuttle and are now hanging back to make it seem as if they walked up the mountain." "Don't think I won't be able to tell," I say with an amused smile. "I believe you will be satisfied by the condition they arrive in, Dao Yuan," nods the Japanese woman. "I'm afraid the 2 of you have me at a disadvantage. Might I ask your names?" "Emiko Miyazaki," responds the Japanese woman. "Kakal," responds the Rakali. "A pleasure to make your acquaintances." "Shi Dao Yuan, you are already aware." I smile. Just then, into the courtyard enter 2 67th generation Shaolin practitioners, an East African boxer, a Chwani soldier, a woman whose species I don't recognize, but who's clearly had schooling in historical European martial arts from childhood and then practiced full-time for some years in a Taoist art. I think Baguazhang, and a starborn woman who is an utter cacophony of competing arts, but whose underlying basis, I would say, is Bateracht. They have clearly walked up every one of the 25,158 steps between the town below and this temple. The enormous copper-haired Brit and the even more enormous, though wide and deep rather than tall, orange-haired Neanderthal would be instantly recognizable as the students of my students' students, even if I didn't know them from both having served as unwitting walking advertisements for Shaolin for 14 and 5 years, respectively. The uptick in interest we got after the Brits' Shaolin status became public knowledge, was measurable. Likewise, when the Neanderthal divulged her status in an interview. Most weren't serious, of course, but who's to say how many practitioners there are today as a result of these two? However, as I said, even if they weren't already known to me, I can read my influence in the way they carry themselves. It's always slightly uncanny to see so much of yourself in one you've never met. The Brit, Neanderthal, and Taoist practitioner of undetermined species perform a Baoquan. The Taoist actually performs two, placing the knuckles of her upper left hand against the palm of her upper right and reversing the arrangement for her lower arms. In all my years, this is my first time seeing a multi-armed species perform that respect. The boxer, soldier, and starburn hesitate before copying the salute. I beckon them forward and gesture for them to take a seat with the two women I was talking to. Shiru Ming, Shiru Feng, it's a delight to finally meet you. I address the redheads. The honor is ours, Shifu, responds the Brit, turning his eyes to the ground in respect. The Neanderthal nods agreement. The blue-skinned Taoist is looking at me. Slightly confused, I know why. You have a question, Bagwajang? I smile. Her luminous eyes widen and her cheeks flush a purple color. I'm sorry, Shifu, I meant no disrespect. But you're wondering why I'm not bald? I chuckle. She looks away abashed. I bring my hand to my long hair, tied into a neat bun at the back of my head, and laugh. When you're the galaxy's finest martial artist, you get a bit of leeway in how you keep your hair. None of my students have raised it as an issue. No need to be embarrassed, girl. I'm not offended. She smiles, clearly still worried. Now, I look at the assorted perspectives. Who's first? Do you need time to recover? I don't mind if you wish to eat, drink, and rest before we start. Forgive me for interjecting, but I thought this was a simple assessment. What exactly are you starting? Asks the Urkali woman. The Pai Mei test cap. When those already schooled to a high level in Shaolin or other styles want to study under an even higher master, there can be some arrogance carried in. The test is meant to make us humble. We've got to try to strike him, and he'll only dodge and parry, not strike back. If we touch him, he bows down and calls us master. We won't, though. I'll go first. I carried water up the mountain with me, and I know it won't make a difference if I rest or eat. Answers the Brit, concealing the roughness of his accent. I understand he thinks he's being respectful, but I shall have to have a talk with him about authenticity. If I'm impressed enough to accept him as a student, that is, he speaks with some humility, though. I can tell it's fresh. He must have had some illusions shattered recently. I don't know why I was expecting tea and a chat, chuckles the Rakali. Of course it has to be trial by combat, when Death World warriors are involved. I smile at her. Tea can be provided if you wish. We'll have time to chat later. I'll survive without tea, sir. She smiles back wryly. Turning my attention back to the Brit, I begin removing my weighted van braces and place them down, allowing them to make just enough noise to hint at their mass as I do so. I shall test you first, then, Ru Ming. Then, addressing the others, would all of you be so kind as to watch from the stoa? He and I shall need some space for this. The 5 perspectives and 2 others clear the courtyard and take position together, watching from the covered walkway surrounding the open space. He was right to put himself first. He's definitely not the strongest, that distinction going to the Neanderthal. But he's the one who looks least exhausted from the climb. The blonde, starborn, Chwani soldier, and the boxer being a close second, third, and fourth. The Neanderthal and blue-skinned Taoist have clearly suffered due to their ancestral lack of stamina. I have to say, I'm impressed a garden worlder was even able to make the climb, let alone keeping pace with this group. Coming down the steps onto the courtyard, I am struck by the Brit's height. He has to be 18 centimeters taller than average and 28 centimeters taller than me. He's bulky, too. Not that I'm worried he'll actually manage to hit me, but if I stood still for either him or that Neanderthal woman, if I let them get a clean strike, there's no doubt they'd seriously hurt me. We bow, and he takes an aggressive stance. I take a defensive. Were he less well-trained, I would take no stance at all. However, that would be arrogance here. Begin, I announce. He lunges forward with impressive speed. He aims an open-palm strike directly at my face. He's almost as fast as me. However, where he has to cover all the distance between himself and me, I only have to move my head out of the way of his strike. Reacting before he even would have landed his blow, he attempts to redirect to my new position. My left backhand meets the inside of his wrist, batting his arm harmlessly away. There's no doubt he's earned his black sash, but, well, I would definitely say his skill has suffered from the best part of a decade of not having any appropriately skilled sparring partners. He's regressed somewhat to thinking of Shaolin as an external martial art, lashing out ferociously to try to cause damage. That's true at lower levels, but at higher levels it becomes internal, focused less on striking and more on avoiding and redirecting. The opposite is true of the Taoist arts, Taiji Quan, Bagua Zhang, etc., which start out internal and then, at higher levels, become external, though the highest level of both Buddhist and Taoist arts is recognizing that the distinction of external and internal is meaningless the same way it is to the uninitiated. My prospective student aims a sweeping kick at my legs. Of course, with his stature, it makes sense that he would favor the northern style, not like the Neanderthal. She has Southern boxer written all over her. Not wishing to remove myself from the ground, I opt to block it with the bottom of my foot, rather than jumping it. I'd say he favors a Tao-style sword, a little longer, custom-made, straight-backed. When was the last time you meditated, Ming? I asked, causing his punch to falter, allowing me to dodge it easily. Been a while, he says while aiming another blow at me, recovered from the falter. I can tell. That won't stand if you're to be my pupil, you realize. Yes, Shufu, he says, more focused now. 40 minutes later. The Brit lies gasping on the ground, soaked in sweat and utterly incapable of continuing. He was much better than I thought he'd be, but still wasn't close to passing the test. Done? I ask, standing over him. A pleasant sheen of sweat on me, but not out of breath. He shakes his head, still gasping too much to speak, and makes to get up. I like your tenacity, boy, but you're done. I chuckle. Sure enough, the strength in his limbs fails and he falls to the ground. I hold out my hand and he grudgingly takes it and allows me to pull him to his feet, feeling that bulk of his. I show him to his friends, who have been dutifully watching as we fought. I place the knuckles of my right hand against the palm of my left and bow, a gesture he returns before collapsing. I'm still undecided. I mean, he was good, but I definitely think there are 65th generations at the temple who could instruct him. Let's see what the others have. 1 hour later. The soldier had some speed and a deceptive amount of stamina, given her slenderness. She lasted 14 minutes. The Starborn was definitely the most chaotic and unpredictable, given the rough, utilitarian way she's ripped bits she's deemed useful from 100 different arts. Suggests a criminal background, but she's clearly reformed if so. She lasted 18 minutes. The boxer was good, with her upper half. Her training, however, views the legs as little more than a platform for moving the arms around. Her attempts to kick were a little pathetic. She lasted 12 minutes. The Neanderthal was the best by a hair, but it's clear she's not used to taking the offensive, compensating for her lack of ability to read intentions by simply reading mechanics and reacting. Very clever, but useless in this context, unless she wanted to just stand there forever waiting for an attack that wasn't coming. The raw power contained in her strikes was unnerving, even to me. That stamina, though, really let her down. 7 minutes. Fighting, or rather, being fought at, inside her climate control field was quite refreshing. I was beginning to get a little hot. Now for the garden worlder. She certainly has some skill from the way she carries herself. I hope she doesn't disappoint me. As it stands, I certainly think I'll be sending one of my senior students on this mission. Much as I hate to pass up the opportunity to learn the martial arts of a new Death World species, there simply isn't enough skill among this lot to keep me engaged for that long. It was so close, too. It's probably for the best. I highly doubt they'd allow me to take Qinglong, and there's precisely zero way I'm leaving him behind. As the four-armed Taoist approaches me, I'm about to offer her the handicap of only using one hand to parry her strikes. Then her limbs whip into a Baoquan with speed and grace that were definitely not present when she arrived, exhausted earlier. I reconsider that handicap. This woman deserves more respect than that. I return her salute and then announce, "Begin!" She's on me! This speed. By the Buddha! I've fought four-armed species before. Where was this coordination then? If I had given her that handicap, I would already have lost. Knives are her weapon of choice, it seems, from her strikes. Each blow has a pathetic amount of power, but they're so fast, in such harmony. Her glowing eyes are flying over me, searching out any weakness. I've not felt this much on the back foot for decades. How is a garden worlder doing this? I thought I'd seen everything. Oh, she's losing it. That didn't last long. 2 minutes and 39 seconds. That's how much she has in the tank. She collapses, wheezing. I stride away from the girl and to the Japanese and Rakali women, addressing both. If you're happy to wait a day, for me to make necessary arrangements, I would be honored to accept this post, dependent on the answer to one very important question. Taken aback, the Rakali woman asks, "What's the question?" I smile. "What is your policy on pets?" Dragon. Thud is the sound of 4 of the 5 meteors of bright blue serpentine beast hitting Victor in the chest in the reception hall of Shindichin's ODR consulate. It's a miracle he was able to stay standing after that impact. He laughs. He's playful, ain't he? The galaxy's finest martial artist smiles and nods. It seems he likes you. I'm pleased. This Chinese myth dragon, as Jenny called him, is the pet of this master, and the ability to bring him was a stipulation of his agreement to come. Of course, the rules I set mean that so long as he can guarantee that Qinglong is not aggressive to sapients, then he's free to bring him. I can't believe there was a species of myth dragons on this planet, and I didn't know about them, exclaims Jenny, clearly having trouble restraining her reaction to the cute, "Can I pet him, please?" she asks Dao Yuan. He gives a mirthful smile and gestures for her to go ahead. Rather than throwing herself at the beast the way she clearly wants to, she extends her hand to his snout. Victor's explained to me that letting animals get your scent is a good way to get them to trust you. Interesting that humans figured that out, when their sense of smell is one of their few attributes that isn't particularly impressive. Only moderately above galactic median average for sapiens. The creature gives her an inquisitive sniff, then makes toward her shins, coiling himself around the tiny Terran woman until his head rests over her shoulder with a contented, rumbling purr. As her hands move to the creature's head and begin stroking his azure fur, she emits a high-pitched keening sound through closed lips, her eyes wide. If I didn't know any better, I'd assume she was in excruciating pain, rather than just emotionally overwhelmed. "I think I'm going to cry. He's so soft," she says, as a long, prehensile sensory whisker brushes over her face, two aquatically adapted forelimbs gripping her shoulders. "I'm going to call him Chin-Chin and he'll be my best friend," she adds, seemingly half serious. "You think he'll get along with Fluffy?" Brunhilde asks Victor, while reaching out to let the newly dubbed Chin-Chin get a scent of her hand, then scratching his chin. "Should do. Fluffy likes to play, knows how not to hurt things smaller than her, too, given how she plays with us, and Sam," he answers. "Apologies, who are Fluffy and Sam?" interjects Dao Yuan, stroking his elegantly maintained facial hair with a thumb and forefinger, his brow creased quizzically. "Sam's my dog. He's half Samoyed, half husky, with a tiny bit of Tibetan Mastiff on his mom's side. It really shines through in his size. He's enormous, like someone looked at a normal Samoyed husky mix and said, 'But what if he was twice as big?' He's also the best boy in all the galaxy," smiles Brunhilde. As for Fluffy, she looks quizzically at Victor. "We can tell him, right? He's not going to be in Triple M. Also, Emmy, Thran, Zahn, Cass, and Fliss all knew before they became Triple Miss." Victor nods. "Yeah, no need for a Fluffy test. Fluffy's my pet. She's an Atexian merc beast." The martial artist's eyes widen in clear recognition before he chuckles. "Well, I can certainly see I won't be in want of entertainment for this voyage. Your crew appear to have no end of surprises." That latter addressed at me. I dip my head and smile. "I shall choose to take that as a compliment, sir." He returns the smile. "I certainly meant it as one." At this point, Emiko and Hunter enter with 4 Terrans and 1 Garden Worlder in tow. Having had a briefing from her, including pictures, name, and professions, I don't technically need an introduction, but elect to introduce myself anyway, for politeness' sake. "Greetings, all of you. My name is Captain Klockal, and I look forward to having you aboard my ship," I say with a smile and a welcoming extension of both wings. The full-figured, half-Denisovan from Seilun Hangug, with relatively short hair, bar the fringe she maintains over her right eye, steps forward and extends her hand to me, smiling. "I'm J. Peach Stone, the sociologist. I'm delighted to meet you." I take her hand with my wing claws and we shake. Next, the woman from Yisrael Hachadasha, with hazel brown eyes, tan skin, and curly dark hair, steps forward, along with the average height man from New Colorado, with hair dancing on the boundary of blonde and brunette. They don't particularly look like spies, either of them, but I suppose looking like a spy wouldn't be a particularly desirable trait in a spy. "Ziva Whisper Pereira," smiles the woman, "UTC intelligence officer. And this is Leon Kennedy Byrne, the same." The man shakes his head mirthfully and says, "I wish you'd let me introduce myself, Pereira." I extend my wing claws first to the hand of Pereira and then Byrne before asking, "Should spies be introducing themselves as such?" They both give an amused smile before Pereira answers, "I don't know. Have you been doing anything you think the UTC would want you spied on for?" My natural eyes widen. I sincerely hope not. The thought of the UTC having any interest in me that wasn't purely positive is quite terrifying. Pereira playfully smirks. "Then you have nothing to worry about, and neither do we." I respond uncertainly, "I'll take your word for it." Next to step forward is the Garden Worlder from Kiklos, with purple hair and the single enormous eye, with a light pink iris dominating the middle of her face. "E&A's, just E&A's. I'm a statistician," she says, shyly extending a 3-fingered hand for a handshake, that I'm fairly sure her species doesn't have as a standard greeting. I smile warmly at her before turning my attention to the last. A man who I've heard was born, raised, and educated in an enormous reserve on Novi Les, meant for Terrans who wish to carry out an ancestral lifestyle of hunting and gathering. I was forewarned about his potentially distressing choice of attire. He wears a coat, trousers, boots, and gloves, all apparently sewn together, not from lab-grown leather and fur, but from the skinned hides of animals that he himself has hunted. He makes no move to introduce himself, so I extend my wing claws, trying not to dwell on the provenance of the material I'm volunteering to touch. He hesitates before holding out a leather-clad hand. His face is as unreadable as Miss Hunter's usually is. Timancha Nulganet, he says simply, not offering his epithet eagle or his profession. I'm told that you're the galaxy's best tracker. Mr. Nulganet? Apparently, he says, eyes fixed on me, face, voice, and body entirely unreadable. Unreadable Terrans are incredibly unnerving. Their default mode is so raucous and expressive. But this man might be plotting the unmaking of all that I hold dear, or daydreaming about tomorrow's lunch. I'd have no way of knowing either way. I need to remember that unnervingly unreadable does not equal unsavory, and that terse does not equal insidious. He may be a lovely individual once I get to know him, if I get to know him. My admittedly limited experience of unsavory and insidious Terrans is that they are as bad at concealing their true nature as decent and honorable Terrans are, though that might be complacency on my part. I should not rely on that supposition. In any event, the ODR have deep enough pockets and enough sense that I'm certain they will have thoroughly vetted all their hires. It's therefore extremely unlikely that he'll turn out to be hostile. It's at this point that Miss Stone notices the creature wrapped around Jenny and emits a squee of delight. "Oh my God, he's so cute! Is he yours?" she says, rushing over to the encoiled woman. Jenny shakes her head and gestures to the azure creature's owner. Stone opens her mouth, but the jovial martial artist preempts her. "Go ahead, Miss Stone." Everyone who hasn't yet had a turn takes the next few minutes to shower the creature with much appreciated pets. Well, the timid little Kiklo woman does take a while, seeming to work up the courage. Hunter just stands behind Emiko, while the latter pets the myth dragon. Nulganet makes no move to pet him. Again, with his inscrutable expression, he might want to or might not. Eventually, Emiko announces to all present, "All right, everyone, now that we've introduced and bonded a little, who's up for dinner and drinks?" There's a general chorus of agreement. "That's what I like to hear. Does anyone have a recommendation of a place they think could take?" She starts counting the now enormous group, but quickly shrugs and just gestures around at everyone. "All of us?" Later, we managed to find a relatively empty restaurant that was happy to give our contingent the use of the first-floor loft for our impromptu party. Victor and Barn are having an alcohol-fueled, lively, good-natured debate about a conflict involving Byrne's cultural forebears destroying an enormous and extremely valuable quantity of tea, either owned by or protected by Victor's cultural forebears. From what I gather, this conflict took place more than 9 centuries ago. Titan! Terrans can hold a grudge. What does it matter when neither of these two polities have existed for nearly 5 centuries? "No taxation without representation," declares Byrne affectedly, before standing, placing his right hand over his singular left side heart, and singing a song, which my translator helpfully informs me was the national anthem of the American states, prompting much mirth from the rest of the table. It's a good thing we have the room to ourselves, as we'd definitely be disturbing other patrons otherwise. Having finished the improvised meal of lychee and persimmon, I decide that now is a good time for taking in the scenery. I stand from the low table we were sat around and begin making my way to the balcony, reassuring all that I'm not uncomfortable and just going to take in the sights. No moderation of your behavior is necessary, so long as the privacy field stays up. I chitter wryly, prompting every head to swivel to make sure that it is, in fact, still engaged. I stride to the balcony door and wave it open before stepping out, the privacy field instantaneously cutting off all noise behind me. The nighttime drop in temperature has cleared the humidity of the day, leaving the air crisp and clear. I inhale deeply. It's still novel for me to attend a party like this entirely sober, but Tkakik is still crop feeding, and it would be a terrible shame to force Korak to pull double duty feeding her for the weeks it would take me to detoxify. Not to mention, something would feel wrong with not being able to give her my crop milk. So I'm sober for the foreseeable future. I look up at the stars, noticeably brighter and denser than they were on Zanzibar, from closer proximity to the galactic core, resulting in the average distance between them being reduced. I'm just looking out to admire the valley bottom city on this latest addition to the roster of death worlds I've visited, when the door briefly slides open behind me. I turn to see that it's Emiko, Mistress Miyazaki. To what do I owe the pleasure, I tease. Don't you start with the Mistress Miyazaki. I get enough of that from Thran, she retorts with mock sternness before her face softens. I was just checking that you were okay. I'm perfectly fine, Emiko. Just enjoying the view and thinking. What are you thinking about? She smiles, stepping to my side to admire the view with me. Oh, life, the universe, everything. Have you considered 42? I laugh at her, continuing in my reference to old Terran media. We stand in silence for a few moments before I venture, am I right in thinking that Mr. Nulganet has the same condition as Miss Hunter? She considers, screwing up her face and baring her teeth. Yes and no. Sigh. Terran doublespeak, I swear. How yes and how no? I respond with mock exasperation. She turns to me and says, Okay, Tekal, this is confidential and need to know, all right? I'm going to tell you because it's your ship he's coming aboard, but this is not to become shipboard gossip, all right? Her sternness genuine now. I gulp slightly and nod. On my honor, it's a similar outcome from a different route. Thran's is genetic, his is social. I frown. I'm afraid I don't understand the implications of that. She sighs. From what I'm told, the ones who were in charge of finding the galaxy's best tracker were initially directed to his father, only for his father to tell them Timantia had exceeded his skill some time prior. I understand he was quite difficult to find as his father no longer had contact with him. It turns out he'd spent 2 years living almost entirely in the wild, only occasionally coming to towns to trade for things he needed but couldn't make. It seems his father was the sole caregiver and instructor in his education right up to university equivalent level, all in hunting and tracking, of course. The result is that he's really only had any significant relationship with one person, and it's a person he seems to be estranged from. Therefore, my guess, he's never learned how to socialize. Well, that's unfortunate. Is there any upshot of that would be obvious to a Terran but is not obvious to me? I query. None that spring to mind. He's not dangerous, in case you're wondering. By all accounts, he seems like a perfectly pleasant young man. Just one who's never learned how to smile and say hello. I think I'll recommend him to the therapist when we get one. It's still looking like Nova Fenuscandia will have to meet this therapist, and I assume, from the short notice, they won't be the finest therapist in the galaxy. She chuckles. We haven't entirely given up on finding one to meet us on Neonesia. As far as being the finest in the galaxy, I'm afraid that concept doesn't track with therapists. Even if we found the therapist with the finest results in their track record, it might be that their personality just isn't a great fit for Victor, Thran, or any of the other crew who wish to engage them for sessions. People compare finding the right therapist to searching for the one, only minus the romance. Unfortunately, we don't have the months of active searching it might require to seek out the perfect one for this group. So we're having to settle for getting one with a decent track record and a bio that seems like they might be a good fit for the crew. It'll be too bad if they get 6 sessions in and decide that they just aren't working well. Appraising the woman, I say, I believe I've come to a conclusion about your minds. She chuckles. Oh, do tell. I've heard all about your famous outsiders' perspectives on Terrans. I puff, mirthfully, through my nostrils before answering. I've come to the conclusion that Terran minds are put together the same way Terran machines are. What? Cocking an eyebrow in a way that suggests, for the first time, the quantity of alcohol she's had. She prompts, do go on. No thought has been given to lastability, to the long haul. The all-consuming nature of your species' cradle world means that the long haul has, historically, not been worth considering. So you build your machines for power. Output, now! You assume that when the long haul comes along, you'll either not be there to worry about it, or you'll be able to just patch what is broken. It's really only just occurred to me that the Terran approach to engineering might be a reflection of evolution's approach to you. She thinks a moment before bursting into giggles. You might be right. Honestly, I'm a little ashamed on behalf of the ODR that none of us thought of including a therapist on the staff roster. A few moments more pass as we appreciate the vista, before I say, let's get back inside and we'll miss the party otherwise.